Hi, friends, and welcome to your Damascus Daily Prayer Lab. My name is Mary Hope Randolph, and I'm a missionary with Damascus. Today is Monday of the 18th week of the Ordinary Time, and we're reflecting on today's Gospel, which we find in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 through 36. Now, today is an action-packed Gospel where Jesus puts his disciples in a boat, and he sends them across the sea in the middle of the night where they're being tossed about by waves. And then Jesus goes out and walks on the water. At first, they don't recognize him, and Peter asks him, if it's you, call me and walk on the water. Jesus calls him. Peter starts walking on the water, crazy. It's superhero type material going on. But then he starts to sink, and Jesus steps in and saves him. Now, in the midst of all this, we see that fear is coming up a surprising amount of times in a short period of time. I'm going to point out a couple of these to you. So when the disciples see Jesus walking on the sea, it says they were terrified. And when they cry out that it's a ghost, it says they cry out in fear. And what Jesus actually addresses in them when he speaks to them is not at first that they don't recognize him or that they're having doubts, but rather their fear. Jesus says, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." And so Peter gets the courage to say, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water," right? He's responding to what Jesus says. And so Jesus says, "Come." And Peter gets out of the boat. He's walking on water. It's amazing. But then what happens? He sees how strong the wind is and becomes frightened. And that's when he begins to sink. So we see what fear does. Fear gets in the way. It gets in the way of what? Between the disciples actually recognizing and seeing who Jesus is. And then it gets in the way of Peter being able to trust Jesus. Because a lot of times fear feels urgent. It feels big. It feels like the most important thing it feels like something that can't be ignored. Right? Peter is looking at the situation. It's true. There is wind. There is water. There are things that in some ways it makes sense that they're invoking fear in Peter. But Jesus is saying that fear is not the end of the story. That's what he's saying, to take courage. And what Peter is able to do, what's this antidote to fear? It's the presence of Jesus. But not only that, it's asking for Jesus to show his presence. That when Peter says, "Lord, save me," immediately Jesus stretches out his hand and catches him. And so there's an invitation today that if you experience fear, if you experience anxiety from real situations, to call out for the Lord's presence, to allow him to step in. This has been a scripture reflection on the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 through 36. Again, my name is Mary Hope Randolph, a missionary with Damascus. And as always, we want to thank St. Gabriel Catholic Radio for making these reflections possible. To see how you can pray with us every day on the new and improved Damascus app, please visit us at damascus.net.